Welcome back to the School Hours CEO podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Gray, and joining me today is Jessica from Thriving in Motherhood Podcast. Jessica helps overwhelmed moms move from surviving to intentionally thriving by teaching them simple, sustainable systems to make consistent progress on what matters most without hiring a babysitter, getting caught in endless to-dos, or becoming a slave to their planner, which I think all of us moms can attest to is a challenge. So welcome, Jessica. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to have you.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be able to chat with you today, Danielle. Thank you so much.
Of course, of course. So let's start with this. I want to ask you, what was life like for you when you were still caught in the overwhelm and the survival mode? Like, how did that feel day to day? I want to see where the starting point was.
Yeah, well, I would like to say that for me, I've been a mom for 12 years. And so I've had many seasons of survival. I think we have this idea that like one day I will have enough things figured out and I will never be in survival mode again. And that is not my experience. Whether it's been moving or, my husband's done grad school and he's a professor. And so like that's intense. Or whether it's, sickness or travel or pregnancy or whatever it is, there's always things that puts us into survival mode. And so I think for me, the shift has been when I used to be in survival mode or go through those hard seasons, I floundered and was stuck and I was often a victim and I didn't know what to do. And I wanted someone to come save me. And now when I am in a survival season, I feel confident and empowered in it because I now have tools to manage that season, just like I do have tools when I'm in the really fun and showy and exciting thriving seasons when everything's going how I would like it to go.
Amazing. And what's funny about that is I think like you're saying, I just needed, some tools, right? But entrepreneurship and motherhood are very similar in the sense that, we grow up being told what to do, where to go, how to be, when this is due, how to do this thing. And then all of a sudden, both with motherhood and entrepreneurship, all of a sudden it's like, what? You're not going to give me a step-by-step here. I'm not going to be told how to manage my deadlines or how to raise this child or, and then of course, I've only got one child, but I know you've got multiple. And from what I understand, even from one kid to the next, motherhood is not really the same because they have their own personalities, they have their own quirks, they have their own everything.
Yeah, yes. Everything's different. Yes.
Yes. So that I'm sure adds to the overwhelm and this, like you say, many seasons of the different kinds of survival. And I love what you said about it never really ends in a sense, like not kind of a doom and gloom kind of a way, but like it's not like you can just kind of I think the angle you're getting at, you can't just kind of push through and then just, okay, now that it's over, now we're on the other side, because like you say, there's always something else. And then, like I said, I only have the one child, and he's almost 9.5 now, but we've done a lot of crazy things. We moved to Nicaragua for a while. We tried the homeschooling thing. I know you do homeschool, which is like kudos to you because I tried it and I'm a lot of things, but a homeschool teacher is not one of them, unfortunately, but I gave it an honest effort. But so let me ask you this. So what was the moment or the experience that you were going through that made you realize that something had to change? Like that made you realize that, okay, I can't just go from one thing to the next. I really do need to kind of build my own arsenal of tools.
Yeah. So when I had my second child, I had a 2-year-old, brand spanking new 2-year-old and a newborn. And I contracted something called C. diff at the hospital, which is something that can kill you. It's a intestinal colon bug that can get out of control and then it takes over your body. And so when I was like 2 weeks postpartum, I realized, hey, this is not getting better. It's not a normal thing. And I go to the ER and they're like, oh, you're in isolation. Let's get everyone like in full garb and you are here now. And so I was there for a week, just like they're trying to get the infection under control. And during that time, I just realized that my start of motherhood, I really floundered. I was not living. I was just existing during those first few years of motherhood. And so while my body was physically trying to survive, I realized like I was ready to start living again. I did not want to continue on this way. And it wasn't going, I now had 2 kids. This was not changing. This was my life now. And so from there, for me, that's where I began going full blown into problem solving mode for myself and starting to figure things out. Now, at that point, I didn't know I wanted to I didn't have a business. I wasn't podcasting, I was just at the very beginning stages of motherhood. But that for me was the catalyst of, I've got to create a life I'm excited about, because this is not fun. 2 years of floundering, not fun.
No, definitely not. And so what was the hardest part about acknowledging that something did need to change and that you ultimately were the only one that was going to be able to do that?
That's a really interesting question. I don't know if it was like, I think it was something that I had to recommit to over and over and over again. It's like, yeah, I am committing to this again. Yes, no one is coming to save me still. Yes, I do need to figure out this next problem, because it's a long list of things. When you are an overwhelmed mom, it's not just cooking and cleaning, but it's like a full lifestyle overhaul. There's like, it's apples and oranges of pre-mom life and post-mom life, like pre-kid, post-kid. And so it's a long journey. And I think a lot of times we're so hard on ourselves. I was so hard on myself. And I look back now and I think, man, you were doing so great with what you knew at the time. But it was a long journey of skill set building.
Yes. Yeah. I 100% agree with you. And I heard this quote early on in my motherhood journey that said, if you're worried about being a good mom, you already are one. And I just remember just at the time, just breaking down in tears, because I thought, it was such a nice validation that, I mean, as a mom who cares deeply about my child and running a household and having things go well, I forget sometimes that that's not actually a default setting for some people, and it's not about a comparison game either, but it just was nice, to recognize that, okay, I do care about being a good mom. That makes me already equipped to be a good one. So, I can stop being so hard on myself, because there is this mental load that mom entrepreneurs specifically have that, I mean, I think all moms carry a mental load to some degree, obviously, but not like the husbands and the dads. And I'm not putting any husbands or dads down. My husband is amazing and always has been. But at the same time, I think you can probably agree, we're the moms, we're the ones that, we know what's running low in the pantry, and we keep track of everybody's dentist appointments and when the school photos are and when the practices are and when the next family get together is. And how many days ahead of time do I have to start prepping this thing for this dinner that I'm hosting, and, all these things. And then on top of that, you add in multiple kids and then, business things and systems and stuff that we need to have in place to be able to manage it all. So I know that a lot of moms and people in general can really resist change, or they fear that, they're not really sure that they can handle more. And a lot of the time, the things that you and I talk about specifically, which is, moving to the thriving, which of course involves building sustainable systems, which we'll get into in 1 second. But on the outside, I think a lot of people get overwhelmed because they think, well, I have to add more things. I'm trying to take things off. How do I add more? So what fears or doubts did you have to face, or do you see in your clients? And how do you kind of help overcome those when we're making that transition to trying to try this new thing when there's already so much going on?
Well, I think I had a different experience in that I found it so motivating. Like for me, when I started my podcast, that the motivating piece to me was, if I can simplify the rest of my life well enough and figure out how to make this fit, then I can do this other fun thing. And so for me, I felt, instead of like resistant to change, it was really this carrot of, I'm going to get really good at this home stuff because I want to get a lot of fun with the business stuff. And so, and that comes from, like, again, I am a full-time homeschooling mom. I love the name of your podcast. And mine is like the opposite. It's the cracks and crevices off school hours time, that I'm doing my business. But the idea is the same. And I just found that what did I struggle with? Well, there was the mom guilt. There was the not wanting to admit that I was a working mom for years.
Right.
Like years. There's layers to there of like growing into owning what I was doing. But when it came to like the actual motivation for it, I just found that it was exciting and gave me reason. It's not that exciting to be like, I'm going to master laundry. Yes. But when you're like, if I can get laundry done and assist in my quickly so that I've got an extra hour to work on this thing that I want to do, laundry becomes a fun game all of a sudden.
Yes. I 100% agree with that, actually. And I think that kind of goes back to my point earlier about, how we do one thing is how we do all things, because we as moms can, whether we're running businesses or not, we can systemize anything. I've even systemized making my husband's lunches for work. He likes this particular kind of salami, which thankfully freezes well. So I found a way to make the sandwiches all, I can make like 5 or 6 at a time and freeze them. And then it's the lunch making becomes easier. But even the lunch making I've systemized. And like you say, the laundry, you just systemize it, clean the house, systemize it, because then it becomes, well, for one, it becomes kind of like a default, and you don't have to use so much brain power, and you don't fall into the decision fatigue of how can I spend my time when you already have a system of, okay, well, it's this time of the day, so this is what I do right now, which can sound a little bit mundane and boring and repetitive. But the problem is we have so many things that are thrown at us, and things that get thrown off kilter, or for you, maybe the homeschooling lessons don't go the way that you wanted to, or the supplies you needed for a certain lesson don't come in. Or for me, my son will call and say, I need my puffer at school, and it's like, I'm in the middle of something now, but obviously, our kids are our first priority, so we're going to prioritize those things. But like you said, when you can systemize the other things that can be systemized, it makes it easier. And like you said, you have more time now to do the things that you actually want to do. And I don't hate doing housework. I actually, I enjoy it to the degree that it allows me to show my home gratitude for, housing my family. And I mean, I don't love it. It's not like my favorite thing ever, but it can be done. And I can predictably know it'll take me only this many minutes because I do these things in this order every time. Right. So speaking of systems, I know that we've talked about this a little bit. You help moms create those sustainable systems to thrive. So what's the first step that you recommend to moms who want to break free from feeling overwhelmed?
So the very first thing I recommend, and this is what I did actually back when I was in the hospital bed, is I started figuring out, what do I want my motherhood to look like? Because I think without that clear vision, everything else doesn't matter.
Yes.
It doesn't matter whose morning routine you pick. It doesn't matter unless you start to decide what kind of motherhood you want. And so for me, the way that I like to think about my vision is, when I was a teenager, we lived in Iowa for a couple of years. And our friends would live out in these cornfields. And so this was pre Google Maps. And my mom would write a sticky note on the steering wheel. If I was supposed to pick up a sibling, it was drive into the cornfield and then find, left at this sign and right at the silo and cross this dirt road. And so one day I picked up my brother and we made it there following the sticky note, but I got the sticky note directions turned around. We missed a sign. And before I knew it, we were lost in a cornfield. Oh, no. And so I called my mom on the cell phone, the old kind with the little antenna. And I was like, what do we do? And she's like, where's the sun? I'm like, what? She goes, what side of the car is the sun on? I'm like, okay, it's on this side. She goes, great. Keep it on that side and keep driving through the cornfield until you get yourself into town, and then we'll figure out where you are. And so when we have this vision, it acts like that. It's not going to be step by step. It's not going to be the left and the right, but it'll keep us going where we want to go. And so for me, I've got the Thriving Motherhood Planner that I've been using for years. That's what I create. That was the very first tool I created for myself. I never intended to share it, but that's what I created when I got out of the house, out of the hospital. And in the front, I put my vision for that year. And it was just my roadmap, essentially, my son, to help me start to piece together all the inspiration that I had got from, okay, well, I'm watching all of these videos on YouTube, or I'm reading these books, or I'm noticing this about this family, or I thought that was kind of cool how they did that, and start puzzling it together. Because I think until you know what kind of life you want, because I imagine your vision of a great motherhood is totally different from mine. And that's awesome. And how your business fits into that is totally different. And that's awesome. But until we know that, it really doesn't matter what systems you make, because you want to make them support what the life you want, not just arbitrary things.
Right. Oh, we are speaking the same language, because that's the first step of my mom method, is the M stands for manifest, but it is to get clear on what that is. What do you want your business and your life to look and feel like? Because like you say, if you don't have that marker of what, and I think this is a step that a lot of people skip, which is why they get so frustrated and overwhelmed, right? Because they don't realize that their biggest problem is just that you don't have a benchmark of where you're going. So of course it feels like you're scattered, because you don't know even where you're going, right? Of course you're not going to know where if you're going in the right direction or not in the car, if you don't know that you need to keep the sun on this side of you, right? So clarity 100% is absolutely key. So after that, okay, so they've gotten clear, let's say they've gotten clear on what they want that to look like. So then what's one actionable step that they can take from there to begin creating that sustainable system without feeling like it's just one more thing to do or add on the calendar?
Yeah. So I think I've got a piece method for planning my week. And I feel like what's really important about this is you start with P, which is the purpose of the week. And so that's going to be pulling something from both real life. If it's a kid's birthday party, this is not the week to do a business launch. Okay?
Right. Yes, exactly.
Ask me how I know. I tried that one. Don't recommend it. Okay. So you kind of define the purpose of your week, and that funnels down from your vision as well as what's happening in your everyday life. And then you go back, and E is for energy. So after you've kind of figured out where you want to go this week, you look back at the previous week and you celebrate. And we've got pages for this in the planner, like every month. You sit down and you go, okay, what did I accomplish? What did I learn? What did I discover? Where did I go? What was significant for our family? What books did I read? Because as moms and as business women, we skip this so often, and then we think things aren't going well, and we get super depressed and we get burned out. And you're like, and so even after doing this for like 9 years, every time I sit down, I come in depressed and I leave thinking I'm amazing. Still, like, you'd think you wouldn't be surprised anymore, but that's essential, because when you plan a week from that, hey, actually things are going a lot better than I thought they were, then that, opens the way for more excitement in the upcoming week instead of dread or overwhelm or the, frustration. Then A is for appointments. Now we're practical. We're just looking what's on the schedule. C is for choose 3. So this is where you pick your big 3 for the week. And this is where you do me, my family, and beyond. This is straight out of like Michael Hyatt's playbook from 12 years ago, before he even had a planner. This is where this is what I was listening to when I was doing laundry. So, but the idea here is really just over time, you might not be balanced every week. If you are doing a business launch, it's not going to look the same at home as it is with your regular life. But week to week, if you consistently write down those 3 big priorities for the week, you're going to see why you feel off. Oh, we've been doing way too much at home. Of course, I'm feeling like I'm dropping the ball in my business. Or I've been focusing just on the business. Of course, I'm feeling off about my family. And then E is for everything else. So I break things down into context-based to do. So everything's batch. So things from my home, things have to be done on the computer, phone calls I have to make, errands I have to run, things you need to discuss with people. So that when I am sitting down to work, I can make massive progress in small pockets of time. Because that is how I work, And so, and that is integrated business. A lot of people separate their business and work life, but as you've mentioned, like, I put it all together on one page. So that every week I now have a solid, I have my vision for my year and the kind of life I'm creating, but now I have my vision for my week, and I don't plan granular day to day. Generally speaking, if I have that written down for the week, then when I have a moment, I can look at the context that I'm in, what's happening, and knock it out. And so, and match my energy level for that day. Or, because you talk about those interruptions, running, going to school, the interruptions are going to happen. And so I got frustrated with rewriting my daily lists over and over and over again. That was driving me bonkers. And so I just found, if I can have a roadmap for my week, then I can be incredibly flexible and entirely intentional and get a ton of things done that I need to have happen.
Yes. All of it. Amen. Preach. Yes. I agree with all of what you've said, 100%. And especially the batching of tasks too. I think it's important that, if not everybody knows, that our brain is actually wired to operate that way. And and this is why I think a lot of people get, they're not making as much progress as they want, especially moms who are working from home, when it's so easy to, I'll just throw a load of laundry on, and then you go to move this, and no, but I just have to restock the toilet paper, and then, I'll circle back to my desk, and then before you know it, 20-30 minutes has gone by, and your brain is totally now in like housework mode, right? And I don't know the science. I really should study the science, but there's some science that states that the task switching uses a significant amount of brain energy, right? And then on top of that, your brain can only make 20 really good decisions a day. And then after that, the quality of decision making, this is why Steve Jobs, for example, always wore just the same outfit all the time. Because he's like, I'm not going to use one of my good decision making decisions on the clothes I'm going to wear. I've got this corporation to run, right? So when we let ourselves get distracted and we are switching tasks constantly, we're using up precious brain power that we could be using on things that actually matter. And sometimes it is just having a conversation with somebody in the family. Sometimes it's going to maybe a heavy appointment where, maybe you're, whatever might be happening, or maybe it's a business thing. Maybe it's a launch thing. Like you said, and you need, anybody who's done a business launch knows that you need to be on for that, right? So that's why it's important that you're looking at the rest of the things like in your peace model, and making sure that the context of what you're working on makes sense for where your energy is and what your priorities are and what else is going on. And it sounds like you and I are doing the same thing, where we're starting with the priorities are first me and my family, right? And this is going to sound selfish, but for me, my priorities start with what I need, because I know that I, for way too long, was prioritizing everything else first and then putting me last, because I thought, whatever, I can take care of myself. I'm a strong, independent, and it's like, that's true, but I also need to have a soak in the bath for an hour and not be interrupted. And I still need to, and that's not an everyday thing, but when I need that, right? And we need to be recognizing, like you said, our energy, for example, recognizing where and when we are most active, or where and when we tend to need that downtime. Or like, I like to get up a few minutes before everybody else and just have a few sips of my coffee while it's still hot in the morning before the day kind of starts taking over, right? And so I love that whole method is just so good. So what do you see is the biggest transformation that happens from moms when they move from, just surviving to intentionally living using this peace framework, for you and for your clients?
Yeah, it's incredible, because I have moms that have emailed me with like 13 kids that, like with the full span, that are like, this has changed my life. And then you've got the young moms with like 1 or 2 kids. So I think the lovely thing is it's a true principle, right? These are true principles. Right. It sounds like you have a lot of these true principles, and we've just discovered them in different ways. But I think what I love hearing from them, and for me, is that all of a sudden, you don't need the list so much anymore. Mm-hmm. Like, if you've taken the time at the beginning of the week, you just got to live your life. And you can be confident that when you have a moment to work on something, you know what it is, and you're going to get it done. But most of the time, I'm reading books on the couch with my kids, and we're doing homeschooling lessons, and we're outside, and we're gardening, and we're like, I don't have to, I think for a long time. And I think when you start learning it, it's like this frantic energy that comes with like, I've got to get this thing done and this thing done. You're like trying to hit all the markers so that you get all your systems and your routines done. And at some point you just realize, I don't need to live this way anymore, right? Like, the essential thing, there's not that much that's actually that important. Right. And when you can start to get really, like, it can be kind of scary. You're like, I'm only picking 3 priorities this week, but I could write 25. And when you learn to be, no, I'm actually going to make choices ahead of time so that I can just live my life and not push myself to the brink every day, because I'm not a robot. I'm a human. Right. And I want to enjoy the people around me. I want to enjoy the relationships that I have. I don't want it to always be this like, well, I want to spend time with you, spouse, but I would like to get this business thing done tonight. Like, when you can just ease the gas off a little bit and be really clear about what matters and what doesn't, then life becomes really fun, like you just get to enjoy it instead of hustling through it. And I think that is something that especially other moms with businesses, I feel like that's something we probably all have to go through and overcome in the process.
Yeah, that is, I have chills. That's so beautiful. You're so right, because we do. And that's 100% me. I'm a recovering, but I was, very type A, I'm the first, eldest child, perform to, get recognition, all the things. Right. And so I was very much stuck in survival mode, very much stuck in the more I'm doing, the more I can prove myself. And I didn't want people to see me. It's like, I remember I was working outside, my father-in-law was coming around the corner, and I picked up my phone or something to make it look like I was busy, and I wasn't just sitting there doing nothing. And I thought, this is like, I am a grown-ass woman. This is so silly that we still sometimes go back to those defaults of needing to look like we're doing enough, that we're earning what we want. And the funny thing is, when, like you say, you take the foot off the gas and you just become intentional, and what you mentioned about, you know, making the choices, I call that setting your future self up for success. Like, let's just, you know, with things like when it comes to housework, for example, like, okay, I don't really want to get up and do a load of laundry right now, but I also know that I'm not going to want to do it tomorrow when I have to get up and out the door to hockey practice and this and that and the next thing. So it would be better if I do it now. And that's obviously when we're outside of the systems and things. But like you say, just making decisions that make it easier to live your life and actually enjoy it, because that's, you know, we lose sight of the fact that that's the whole point. That's the whole point. Like, whether you believe in God, universe, or nothing at all, I think we can all agree that the purpose of life is, whatever it is definitely not to get up, work all day, not spend time with your family, be stressed out and go to bed. That 100% is not the purpose.
And screaming and
so,
being angry at everybody because they're
right.
disrupting the plan.
Well, and exactly, right. And that's the biggest thing for me was I was constantly trying to control everything with such a tight grip that there was no room for flexibility. There was no room to even really breathe. I didn't give myself any time to have any fun at all. And that's a one-way ticket to burnout, right? And so that's why I love what you are all about, because you very much are about, like, let's live our lives. And when you make the priorities and you know what needs to get done and you set yourself up in a way that you can execute on those priorities, everything else kind of falls into place, right? And that's very much a faith muscle flexing, a trust, right? Knowing that, okay, look, I've been given this idea, this plan, this business idea, this mission here for a reason. This is not by fluke. I don't ever think that anything like this happens by accident. I don't think that our meeting was an accident. I don't think this conversation is an accident. And I think anybody listening to this episode by now is going to go, oh my God, I needed to hear this today, right? Because we're intentional, can call in the right people to listen to the episode too. So I hope that it's been helpful to everybody listening. But I love your take. It's just so beautiful to focus on living life first and just trusting that the mission and the vision you've been given will be executed on, right? And we don't need to force it. It will just happen when we're taking the right steps. So, and I guess all of this starts with your 5-step path from surviving to thriving checklist, right?
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes. So when we talk about, we often think we jump from survival mode to thriving, but that's, as someone who is a well-worn traveler on this path, I realized that there's actually 5 distinct phases that we go through and different things that we focus on in each of those phases. And so that checklist just breaks it down really concisely. You can just quick say, okay, this is the phase that I'm in. This is where I put my time and energy. And so that you can start feeling confident today, because I think a lot of times, like just as I described, when I was in survival mode, you want to be saved because it's not fun. But really, there's plenty of things you can do even in survival mode so that you can feel confident. I like to say you've got a thriving mindset, even when you're in those survival circumstances.
I love that. So I'm going to put a link to the 5-step path from surviving to thriving checklist down in the description box, or if you're listening on the podcast, it'll be in the show notes. And I'm also going to give you all of the links so that you can follow Jessica on her journey, on her podcast, on Instagram, all of the things, because she is definitely somebody that we want to be keeping in our little circle of tools, because everything you've shared today, Jessica, has been just phenomenal and amazing. And I am so thankful that you spent this time with us today. Is there any one last thing you want to leave our listeners with? If there's one tip or one mindset shift or just one little note you can leave them with?
Yeah, I think it's just hope. Like I have never lived by family. We have never had outside help. We have never, I've always had my kids with me all the time. We've never had babysitters. For a long time we were in grad school, there was not extra money. And so I really felt like the deck was stacked against me and there wasn't a lot of options, and I didn't feel like I had a lot of hope. And yet somehow there was, and things did get a lot better. And so I think we all have these limitations, but we can be really creative within those limitations. Right. And so just that encouragement of wherever you're at, it's okay. And there really will be things, as you take time to think about it, that you can do to make things better.
Amazing. Well, thank you again, Jessica, for being here. And if this episode has been helpful to you, we would love to hear about it. You can leave us some comments or a review, and catch up with us, either of us, on Instagram. Send us a message and let us know how much you got out of the episode. Thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Thank you.